Hello and welcome to another daily Muppet. In this video, I want to just cover all the things that are happening at the moment because there is quite a lot. Obviously, I've done a lot of lives recently and discussed things in complete detail, um, but I know that in those large, long settings, sometimes it can be difficult to get a simple summary of exactly what's going on. But the live shows and the live videos are intended, of course, to be interactive discussion back and forth. I love to interact with everybody in the audience and all of that. It's it can be fun, it can be frustrating, but that is part of the point of the live shows. So um, I wanted to do a bit of a summary video and clear up a few points on exactly where things are at, especially things like the situation with Bruno Fernandes, where he is at, Brian Mbeumo, where that deal is at, and as well as the striker situation and what we do when we go forward from here. So, a lot to kind of unpack with that, and we will start, of course, with Bruno Fernandes, the biggest story, I guess, of the moment. And it's a strange situation because we've once again found ourselves where we are almost talking about transfers in two different ways. We're almost talking about transfers in two different settings. Um, Before it was, well, what if we get Champions League and we win? What can we go afford? Could we go bigger in the market? Could we go for a bigger striker? Could we go for a bigger this? Could we do that? And now we're in this situation again, looking at Bruno Fernandes and saying, what do we do based on what happens with Bruno Fernandes? And there are a few considerations that are being thought of here within United in terms of how it affects us in the market. Obviously, there's the financial aspect and the fact that he is that if something is going to happen with Bruno, if he is going to leave, if he is going to be sold, that it is going to happen now. And that is money that United will see confirmed during this fiscal year before July 1st. During this transfer window that opens before the Club World Cup, if it's going to happen, um, right now to Al Hilal, obviously that is the main story at the moment. Then it'll be now. This would give United a pretty exorbitant amount of spending to be allowed, but obviously there are risks to that too. It would give them a healthy additional budget, let's say. But in a world where they've missed out on a budget good value striker in Liam Delap, who's chosen Chelsea, and are going to very likely need to spend more if they're going to end up getting somebody in at striker, that isn't a bad situation. The other factor is the speed in which they can move in the market will affect certain targets. Some targets, there's not a rush on. Some players, there isn't any sort of urgency for them to, there isn't an urgency for them to go. That there may not be a ton of competition right at this moment in time. However, for others, such as a Brian Mbeumo, it may be necessary to be able to move fast in the market. So there's those considerations at play. The other consideration is how does it affect your targets? Um, and that, when it comes down to the information and where this is actually at, this is where it's important because let's first start with Ruben Amorim because there's a few parties involved in this kind of discussion and whether Bruno will be sold or not and where things stand as of today. So we start with Ruben Amorim. Ruben Amorim wants to keep Bruno Fernandes. That's normal. He should. He's a very good player. He's an excellent professional, and every manager will want to keep good players, great players, their best players. Every manager will, of course, no doubt about it. Even if Bruno wasn't at the age where he could start him, he would want to keep him, and that is totally correct. And that's what he wants, and that's fine. But what that also means is where is he going to play him? Because he's going to start him if he has Bruno Fernandes. And with the purchase of Cunha and the look at a striker, that does affect the transfer plans that we're looking at. Is Bruno Fernandes a right 10 for Ruben Amorim? In which case, your discussions with players like Brian Mbeumo, should Bruno stay, are a little more complicated in terms of how you can convince them. So when we talk about that later, you have to think of that as a factor. Is Bruno Fernandes an attacking 8 in the system now? Is he the midfielder? Well, in that case, you're probably not going to be getting another midfielder in the vein of an Ederson or something like that this summer, because Bruno Fernandes is going to be starting over them, and that is 1-to-1. Does that mean you move deeper, or does that mean because you have Collier, Ugarte, and Casemiro that there is no room for a midfielder this summer, beyond perhaps getting a younger kind of backup in the 8 position, or maybe that's just Kobbie Mainoo's position, and the midfield is left alone. These are some of the considerations, and all of the money, because the budget is limited, has to then, of course, be put to the forwards, because you don't have any of starting quality if Bruno's a midfielder. So Ruben Amorim's position on this, and we don't know for certain. Nobody has been able to report for certain, and I don't know for certain at this stage where he sees Bruno Fernandes in his team. He has still played him in both, but it seems he's leaned more towards the midfield in recent times, though it hasn't necessarily worked out. So we will see on that. We don't really know, but it may affect things. The idea that they want 3 forwards and are seemingly chasing a bigger one like Mbeumo would, to me, indicate his future may be under Ruben Amorim in the midfield. In which case, I don't think we'll sign a midfielder this summer should Bruno Fernandes stay. But these are the effects. If that's going to change how you spend, where you spend, and what you spend based on the manager's belief, which we don't know yet to be certain, and what that means if Bruno stays versus Bruno goes. So Ruben Amorim will want to keep him, and he will want to be speaking with him to convince him to stay. And that was, of course, his purpose, his intention there, is say, Bruno, I want you to stay. I want you to be part of this team. I want to build it with you. The club's perspective, and I want to make this pretty clear from my understanding of everything, okay? It's been mentioned on a few occasions that like Bruno said, if the club want to sell me, I will go. I don't want to leave. But if the club want to sell me, then I will go. And the thing about it is it's never going to be that cut and dry. It would be nice if football and if reports and if everything that happened was just so simple and just so straightforward, but it's not. The stance of the club is like this, okay? Every single player has a value. Every single player has a price, essentially, in that respect. And why do they have that price? Because for them, that's the price where, from their perspective, they're looking at it and saying, if we had that money, we feel we could, at worst, build the team or replace this player, because there's very, very different players, right? What would be the price for Rasmus Højlund? Whatever we can do so that we're not taking a financial loss, because we already know we need to sign new players there. What would be the price for Antony? Well, and that's why I made a video going through all the likely sales and what their prices are. But everybody has a price. Every player has a price at United where they will look at it and say, this is what it would take. Where if we got that money, we feel in the short and long term it would be potentially better for us if the player wants the move for them to go. That we're not going to sell them. We're not searching out offers at that price. We're not looking for money at that price. We're not trying to sell the player. We're not actively engaging in the discussions. And United haven't. They haven't contacted Al Hilal to talk about this offer. They haven't received anything yet from Al Hilal. They're not seeking out buyers for Bruno Fernandes, but everybody has a price. And the offer from Al Hilal, or what is apparently being discussed in the 100 million plus range, very likely to almost definitely meets or exceeds that money, that value where they feel that they might be better off in the long term taking and rebuilding should the player want to go and should the money come in. So it's not so cut and dry as does the club want the money? Are they going to have to tell Bruno, we want you to leave? It's not going to be like that. It just won't. Um, it's the money that is there is probably at the price that they would accept. If an offer came in for 50, they wouldn't, but they're not seeking it out. And the same could be said for other players, mind you. If an offer for 120 million probably came in for Ahmad, would they have this same thing? Do you want to go? Okay, then we could spend that money. And they would feel the same about that. So it's at the end of the day, fully and only at this stage up to Bruno Fernandes what he wants to do. His brother-in-law, his wife's brother, is his agent on this. Is the individual who was pictured out in Saudi who's having these discussions and is receiving these offers and such from Al Hilal and has been going through it. So now that they've returned back, he is going to meet with them. They're going to sit down, him, his family, them, and make these decisions. And it is fully and entirely up to them. And then they will communicate to Al Hilal, to Manchester United, do I want to leave or not? Based on everything that's happened, based on Amorim, based on whatever, he will make that decision. And it seems that nobody knows what is in his heart, especially on this. However, the fact remains he's been thinking about it. He has been strongly considering it, and he has been engaging in it further. The first time, it was politeness. And then after the final, there was multiple further discussions that continued. Um, he's strongly considering it. So there's not too much time to run on this because, again, the whole point is the Club World Cup, and it seems as though they will. I mean, we kept getting these deadlines, but then they've had new discussions, and he was traveling. He's on the tour and all of that. So now we will see. The only hint we might have is a very cryptic and potentially sad post from this morning on his Instagram, which says, if you tried and failed, congratulations. There are people who don't even try. Very cryptic, very cryptic, very, I don't know. What does that mean? I have no idea, to be quite honest, and I don't think that anybody does, but it certainly isn't making a number of people feel very good on this. Now, I gave my opinion on this, arguing in a direction, because I can certainly see both sides to the discussion as to whether or not it would be the right thing for Bruno to be sold. And I think there are both sides to the discussion, and that's the point. I can argue pretty strongly in one direction. Um, but that doesn't mean I'm 100% on it. It just means that I think in a situation like this, there are really, really, really valid points. And it is completely not wrong from to consider a sale as well. It just isn't. It just isn't wrong in that respect. It isn't wrong to want to keep Bruno. It isn't wrong to think we keep Bruno. We have a top player. Hopefully, we can sign enough good players around him to build up quick enough that we will still be competitive while he's around, or become competitive, not still be competitive because we haven't been competitive, but to be competitive while he's around. But in addition to that, there is the other side of the coin, which is we may not be, and we may need that money in order to ever be competitive, and to get back to competitiveness anytime soon, because we won't be competitive while Bruno is around, because there's just not the money. And when we talk about the targets and such later, we can and analyze that further. My personal opinion is leaning towards one, that he does go, because I just think if this was happening in reverse, and it's very funny, right? Because the other day I saw like, all right, Juventus have contacted um, Joker's agent, and then I see like this panic, like he's gone to Juventus and all of that, and then I look at it in the reverse and I think, wait, but Bruno and his agent have been in touch with Al Hilal like 7 times, have gone through contract terms, have done all of this, like, and people are still wondering if it's going to happen, right? And so I see it in the same way. I'd lean towards, with the number of discussions that they've had, that this will happen. I also lean towards the idea that maybe it's the right time for everybody involved, but especially given that it's Bruno's decision, it seems like he wants to do it, but also doesn't. I would lean towards it being the right thing because I just think that the club does need a full reset, and we've never done it. We haven't. We've been putting it off for 12 years trying to do band-aid fixes, and I do think there is the potential for it being better to reset, not because Bruno isn't good, not because Bruno isn't great, not because um, we're going to sign a ton of better players than Bruno, but sometimes it just needs that to start fresh. And I would include in that, of course, the clearing out of many other players who've been there during the bad period at United. More than 2 seasons, really. And so that brings me to other sales and where things are at. The Because if Bruno is being sold or not being sold, there is other money um, that United need to raise in order to move for additional signings. If Bruno's not being sold, then we have to get money even faster if we're going to be able to buy any of our higher or top targets in the coming days, weeks, and months. So on that basis, the main one, the two main stories right now are, um, I would say, uh, the two main stories at the moment would definitely be Alvaro Carreras going to Madrid, and United's sell-on clause. We're expected to get there. This should be completed when this window is open on June 1st, so that's tomorrow. This should be completed in the next couple of days, and United will receive a boost there of somewhere between 10 and 15 million in profit, so that is very good. That will potentially unlock signings, because as I hear it, and I'll discuss some of the names in a minute, the biggest holdup right now on our top targets is financial and the inability to move for some of these targets who are 20 to 25 million more than what would have been spent on Liam Delap. Um, that's the closest. Jadon Sancho, the situation as it is presently is he is in discussions with Chelsea over a revision of his salary. Now at United he was getting 250,000 a week. He's not going to get that there. They're going to want to do significantly lower than that with an incentive-based plan. If he agrees to that and they end up on those salaries, then they will pretty much surely go through that obligation to United, and United will be able to account for that 25 million right away. Now that's not going to do a ton for them, because it's going to make a small amount of profit, but what it will do is remove the amortization cost, though that's mostly been counted for this year. So that's really going to help us after July 1st. So it's not going to provide too much by way of immediate funds beyond the profit that it's going to give us, and the look to the future to say, okay, next year we for sure have that amortization charge gone. We won't be paying for Jadon Sancho next season. Now, in some of the cases with wage payoffs and things, um, with wage reductions, there's some payoff necessary. Now, in this case, because Jadon Sancho really only has 1 year remaining on his deal with United, the gap is probably going to be fairly small. I mean, it could be a few million, but alternatively, he'll be getting a new 5-year deal. So, that will probably earn at least 5 years. That will probably earn him more than what the wage, anything even close to the wage loss. So there may be no payoff here. There may be a small amount. We may not ever hear about it. Um, but that could eat a little bit of that profitability this year. Um, Beyond that, the other one that is very active is Marcus Rashford. Barcelona want Marcus Rashford. Their two main choices were Rashford and Luis Diaz. Luis Diaz looks to be going to Saudi. That seems to be the story of the last couple of days. That this is what is happening. This is where it's going, and that that's they're going to be their main target in that position, and they have wanted him before, and they've held multiple discussions now. The issue as it stands is that they're looking to say, we will pay a fairly substantial loan fee, 8-10 million or something like that, and then put in an option at the end of the season for the price that United want. This is not ideal to United, obviously, and this is where things stand right now, that there's a negotiation to be had here, because United will want to be sure that they don't have to come back into this situation again in a year. Could we do a conditional obligation again? 25 appearances or something, that it becomes an obligation. That way, Barcelona get to pay it later on, but we can count it a bit sooner potentially. Um, Maybe. I don't think a straight loan and option will suit United. That's obviously Barcelona's opening position. They feel they have the upper hand in the negotiations to a degree because of the situation that we are in. But I am optimistic at this stage that something will get done with Barcelona, because it's the will of the player and the will of the club and all of that. So there may be ways to just make this work. And get it done. So hopefully sooner rather than later, we see something on this, because Barcelona are working on it. I have no idea if they're trying to get in for the Club World Cup or something, or if they're involved in that and they would want a signing before then. I have no idea if that's a factor in this, but that is a very active one. The other sales are very likely going to take a bit of time. Højlund, there's interest from Inter and Juventus. However, they are looking into other strikers as well. Juventus are looking at Gyökeres. We could talk about that in a minute. And they have other strikers and other players on their agendas. Most all of these clubs. Antonio Conte staying at Napoli will potentially or likely help with an offer for Alejandro Garnacho. That is one that there should be a lot of interest in. There definitely should be a lot of interest in him there, from Premier League clubs as well as clubs outside. As part of Conte staying, they're promising him money. We had a good a good thing going for them with McTominay going over there and helping them win the title. So you would think Garnacho could easily come next in line on that. So yeah, there's nothing too close in terms of other sales beyond the ones mentioned there. But those are the major ones to raise funds. Is Antony, which will also take a bit of time. I don't think there's anything instant or particularly close on that yet. But Antony, Garnacho, Rashford, and Sancho are the main ways that United will raise money beyond Bruno Fernandes this summer. So the good part is a few of those could be quick, but otherwise, without some significant sales, United will have to wait until July, very likely, to get other deals done. Doesn't mean they won't be in talks. Doesn't mean they won't be discussing. Doesn't mean they won't be moving forward. But the sales could as well hold things up to a degree. Without the sale of Bruno, with Alvaro, with Sancho, they likely could get done one more major signing. And that's the discussion as of now. And that's where it leads us to striker. Obviously, after missing out on Liam Delap, the main targets that they had, in addition, is number one, Victor Gyökeres, who remains the top target that they would like to bring in. When I say top, I mean the guy that they would like to bring in if they can figure it out one way or another. As I understand it, they've had contact with him, they've had discussions with him, and as it stands, he's going to see what his options are all around, and United have to make a decision whether if they get some money to come in, if it's not Bruno, if they get some other money to come in and they have the money for one more deal like this that's a bit more expensive, that's more in the 50-55 range, do we go for this or do we go for other signings? Or do we go for a couple smaller signings with our money? And that is a decision that hasn't 100% been made yet, as far as I understand, but they probably know, the scenarios. But again, a lot is hinging at the moment on what happens with Bruno to finalize those kinds of decisions. Jokeres does have interest from elsewhere, though the interest and the contact from Juventus is not new. I watched the video where this was discussed by Matteo Moretto, who said that this had actually been for a while, that Juventus want to bring in a top striker, that Vlahovic will very likely be leaving. But it's not necessarily new. It's also been said at times in Portugal that the will of the players to go to the Premier League. So we'll see if that's a factor. The other options that we have are Jean-Philippe Mateta, who is a good player, but will likely also be fairly expensive, and a decision has to be made there. I would suggest he'd be a backup to one like Jokeres if we can't get him. And then, that would be a big one to go for. A big one to go for if they decide they still want a proven good striker and not to go young or not to go like stopgap older striker. In addition, then you have talk about Benjamin Šeško. However, Arsenal are strongly going for him, and at the price that's being talked about, 80 million plus for him, I don't think that is even in the realm of possibility for United to do that. Ekitike is being targeted by Chelsea as well as potentially Liverpool. Also, an exorbitant price being mentioned. United like all of these players, but I don't believe that they would be able to. I would suggest Jokeres, Mateta, or finding some other young player that we haven't really heard about yet, or an old player is the way that it'll go. So I look at it like Jokeres or Mateta, someone we don't know, or like a Welbeck to come in for a season with letting Xerxes run and spending the money elsewhere. So this is a decision that has to be made. There's plenty of context going on. They have spoken with Jokeres' people. They haven't been rejected by him. They haven't been turned down by him, but they want to assess all their options as of yet. And United need to know where they stand financially in order to make these kinds of decisions in full, because they can't if they just go do it and get Jokeres done, they're stuck in the window, fully stuck. Can't do anything. Can't sign any other players for a while, barring the most of these sales getting done again, except Bruno. So that is a huge factor in all this. Alternatively, of course, they could move to Bryan Mbeumo as a player that they could get in as that right 10, stick with Xerxes or an older striker, or look to address the striker situation later on in the window, as there may not be an immediate rush on some of the targets, especially with like Mateta or something like that. Let everybody else fight over Ekitike, Šeško, let the dust settle and see where they stand on the striker or on Jokeres if he's still on the table while they work to get Bryan Mbeumo done. But similarly, with the costs associated, they're very likely to be stuck if they were to do an Mbeumo deal today until they get some of these more significant sales done. Now, the situation with Bryan Mbeumo is he is still, as I understand it, closer to joining a different club, or closer to choosing a different club, or closer to preferring a different club that is in the Champions League. It's Newcastle. We've talked about it before. And it's not just because of Champions League. It's a good project that also includes Champions League and has Champions League to offer in addition. That's a bonus for players. It shouldn't be the deciding factor. I don't think it's like the be-all, end-all. I won't join a non-Champions League club. I've never said that about him. I did think that was the case with Liam Delap, which I didn't really like, and I said it seems like he's going to turn us down if we don't win the final based on everything that was going on there, and that's exactly what happened. For Mbeumo, I don't think it's that severe, but it is a positive. But so is, what's on offer, and that's why it's also important to clarify again the situation with Bruno. Is he a a 10? Is there a full starting spot in this team for Mbeumo? What would be the role? What are we building? What are we going to put around? And where are we going? So United will need to likely, if they want to get a deal like this done, move very decisively because he's closer to another club. However, I want to make it very, very clear, he has not decided. He has not decided. We already took Cunha that Newcastle really wanted, but he wasn't closer to joining them. That Arsenal inquired on too, and he didn't want to join them. Well, Arsenal inquired on Mbeumo as well, and he didn't want to join them. So it's not like it's just Champions League. It's not like that. We'd have to present a solid project. I think that United would do have a chance at him. He has not decided, but they will have to be able to move decisively on it before Newcastle can move decisively on it. And I don't know exactly what their situation is or when they can make moves, because I don't follow enough Newcastle news to understand that. But certainly he is somebody they are targeting and looking at. So we'll have to see what happens there. But it is not decided, though he is leaning towards others. Now, should United go down the, I don't know, cheaper route, I guess I would say, of players, cheaper route of signings, or alternatives, maybe not even always cheaper, to be fair. Um, should they, look at a situation where, okay, we can only get one of these more expensive targets in Gyökeres or Mbeumo. We've talked about the alternatives at striker. We do have alternatives beyond Mbeumo as well, and they're not all necessarily cheaper. But if we miss out and we go for a more still an expensive one because he chooses Newcastle or chooses another club, or if we have to spend less money, we do have alternative options here. And look, um, it would be great if we get our top targets this summer. It would be great if we get ready-made players who fit the system in every single signing, that they're good to go, they're instantly ready, all of that. It would be nice, but it's sort of the same discussion. We have to be ready to have players come in and have a team that isn't ready instantly and that needs time for players to develop, for players to work into the system. And those are some of the discussions that have to happen. Are we really committing? Where are we going? And some of it depends, because look, you have to have ambition at United, and they do. If we can get the best targets who are available now and speed the rebuild up and be better sooner, we're still not going to compete for titles next year no matter who we sign. But if we can speed it up a bit, where we could compete to get into Europe, and the following year we could actually start to really show something, then they want to do that. The faster, the better, of course, if you're not compromising on buying 29, 30, 31-year-olds who aren't going to be here for the long haul, but you're still getting them in that 20, that sweet spot, like 25 to 27 at oldest, which is what Liverpool did in most of their signings too, 25 to 27 and young. So it remains to be seen yet exactly, but so far, obviously, with Cunha, we've gotten one that's ready and fits. The striker front, we'll see, and Mbeumo, we'll see. But if not, we have alternatives, and that's okay too if we end up moving to alternatives. And I want to discuss some of them. The first alternative is probably Tyler Dibbling, who will not necessarily be cheap, but of course United will not buy him at an 80 million price. It would have to be in the 40 to 50 million bracket max with Southampton for them to make a move for him. Tyler Dibbling is viewed as an absolutely top talent who could fit into that right 10 position, or play wing back, but could definitely develop and fit into that right 10 position really, really well. Um, stats wise, you're not going to learn much from it. He is just a very, very talented player that a lot of clubs would want to get, that City really like, that United really like, that a lot of clubs are high on in terms of just his ability, but he will need time to develop, another couple of seasons before you expect him to be a top player. And the same would have gone for Franco Mastantuono, who now looks, unfortunately, like he's off to PSG. Now, I want to discuss Kang-in Lee because we did a video on the 10s a while back, and Kang-in Lee was one who kind of came up as an option that United might look to. He's not been a main fixture at PSG. He was very good in in La Liga. He's a solid player who's just never really been an important necessarily part of this PSG team. But he does contribute 6 goals, 6 assists, and 1,600 minutes is not bad. He's 24 years old, left-footed, very, very technically sound, creative, very good on the ball. A lot of things he does well, and I think would make for a solid player, a solid signing. He would fit into this right 10 role really well. You'd want to get him on a good price. United have monitored him at certain points and had discussions with his agent, so it's just one to keep in mind. That I would say not a bad signing per se if United were to go for it. A good player who still has a lot of potential and has room to grow. I know it's not the most exciting one on earth, but it is a solid player there. And as I was just kind of saying, there's the possibility that that's the direction that we're going to have to go, just depending on sales. And if we don't move Bruno and we don't have a ton of money and we make the decision, we want to sign a striker, we want to sign a 10, we want to sign a midfielder, but we're not going to be able to pay top dollar, then you're looking at options like this who have potential. Another one I've discussed before, Nene Dorgeles, who can play on both sides, but he has played a bit more to the left, so is maybe not the best option. He's a very, very good goal scorer, plays in the Austrian Bundesliga. I would imagine Pavel's familiar with him too. I've watched a bit of him. I watched this Champions League and I watched a bit more of him, and I'm actually still really, really like this player. I think he's got incredible dribbles. He's so direct, really good with both feet and shooting, and quite dangerous. And at the right price could also be a good young option that has potential. But again, when you're talking a player for 25-30 million, it's not going to stop you in the future from buying a better player over the top of him and giving you more options in the forward line. There's been some talk of Pedro Gonçalves. I'm not personally expecting United to make a signing for him because he's 26 years old. He mostly plays on the left. He'd be at best a backup for Cunha. Not that we may not need that, but again, I'm not sure that this is a player that United would be going for, though he of course fits, and I think he would be a decent rotational option in the front three. But to me, this one would be more of if we ended up with money enough where we got our players and we had additional sales or additional departures that gave us more funds, we could go for a Gonçalves to round the team out. The other main big alternative is Antoine Semenyo, who can play on both sides. He's very good with both feet, which I think is part of it. Even though he's right-footed, he's very, very good with both feet. I'm not high on Semenyo because of his price. 70 million, if that's the real price for him, is just way too much for a player like him. But 19 goals and assists. He's a solid player. He is, as I would describe it, like does a lot of the things Garnacho did, but is better at them. Um, Still has a very hit or miss end product. Misses a lot of shots. Still, but still, compared to his XG, his finishing isn't too bad. It's just that he takes a lot of low XG chance shots and a lot of poor shots, I guess I would say, would be what I would say about Semenyo. A lot of shots you don't expect. But he also scores and assists and contributes. He is a really, really good dribbler. He's tall, he's fast, he's physical. 25 years old. I say tall. I think he's taller than 5'10". He's big. He's solid. He's physically there for a winger. He's a solid player. He could very much play at wing back. I see positionally he looks a little more wing backish to me. Would that mean then you're moving Ahmad into the 10? But he's played everywhere, so he could very much be the 10 as well and just give you that flexibility where you would be able to play him at wingback if you certainly wanted to. He fits a lot of the skill sets you'd still want, which is why I understand why they like him. But again, I think he'd be a more expensive option should you not get Mbeumo. He'd be one you'd be looking at and saying, okay, well, we're going to spend a similar amount of money to get an alternative there. So those are just some of the options that we could end up going for. Expensive, cheaper, depending, a lot up in the air. But yeah, the biggest thing is Bruno and exactly where things stand now. And it's up to him. It's fully up to him. And everybody waits with bated breath what Bruno's decision will be. And I guess we'll find out if his message on his cryptic Instagram post is one to worry about. Okay, thank you for watching today's video. We'll try to be live later, just Saturdays. I've got some coaching, got some other things to do, but I will try to be live later. I appreciate you all. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications on. See you in the next video.